I guess the rigidity of the 2-week sprint has always made me stressed because there's like that admission of defeat or failure when you're like, I have to move this to the next sprint. But yeah, I don't know. It seems like every time it comes to like a philosophical thing between you and I, we're on the opposite sides of it, which I think is good for the leader for the leadership of anything.
Probably.
Because if we just agreed on everything, it would be, there's no one to challenge us, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want a yes man.
No. Yeah. I mean, it's nice to, I don't know. It's nice to think of what you think and think why I think it's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm okay with other things. I've worked in the environment where it was just constantly rolling tasks, and it was crushing because at a certain point it was like, I don't feel like I'm getting it done. Like there's always going to be work to do. True. At least at the end of like the 2-week sprint, you know, like you had a good first week. Maybe your second week you can be a little bit lighter. You don't have to push so hard because you're so close to being done. Or like shit hit the fan and you really got to push in that second week. Like, okay, like you know going into that second week, it's not like you got a task in, you know, Monday, it needs to be done by Friday, you better get started on it, you know?
Yeah. In the rolling tasks thing, it's kind of like you can get a sense of how important the task is. And so if you know that it's not urgent, you can take that fuck around time, but it's self-directed fuck around time. At least in a sprint, like you're saying, it's kind of an end date of, I know I have to do 4 hours of work in the next 40 hours of work.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to play Gears of War or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is like the idea with this sprint is that you want to kind of like normalize, so eventually you want to have the story points match up with everybody working like roughly a full day.
Yeah.
So whatever that means, right? Like I'm not a fan of the like you work 8 hours, because realistically, like I don't think an engineer should be writing code for 8 hours a day, like just from like a mental standpoint, because there's also got to be like meetings and stuff on top of that. That's like a shit ton of work to do. Yeah. I think like a more realistic is like 6 hours per day with like, you know, the like daily stand-ups and like retros, reviews, like that kind of stuff. Yeah.
It's hard because for me, for home games, it's like I don't care about anything the way that I care about this.
Yeah.
And it's because it's ours. And so if I work for a person, like they'll never have, I'll never have the level of care that they have.
Yeah.
So the idea of managing this like it's a job is so foreign to me. Like if we were to ever, not that we're anywhere close to making this a real thing, I'm just, you know, I kind of dream at night about what would happen if this, if this like took off. So
I think that's fair. You've been working on this for like 4 years.
Yeah. I think that's the thing too, is that I've done a lot of growing over the last 4 years, and like I don't know, I just have a lot of responsibilities today that I didn't have even when I started this, and my perspective on stuff has changed. And so this has probably been one of the most, like, I've never had a job for 4 years. I've moved jobs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The longest job I've had was like 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So the idea of this being what it is very, I don't know. It's weird. It's hard for me to think about this as a job, but as I've gotten older, I realize I need to take things seriously, and I can't just fuck around. Yeah. So if I had to take this seriously, how would I run it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't do like a sprint schedule?
I don't think I could. I don't think I can maybe a project manager, because that's their job, right? Is to take the needs of the business, and then it would be my role and your role to define the needs of the business and the technical roadmap and you know, what we need to do and how we need to do it. And then we have project managers who are, you know, employees, and their job is to manage the work. And to me, managing the work of this is such a foreign concept, because it's like everybody who works on this, it's like you should this should be you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's not how people are, and I wouldn't expect that of anybody, because I don't give that to any work that I have.
Yeah.
Any job that I have.
Yeah.
So it's kind of tough to think about what it would be like.
Yeah. I mean, I think that one of the bridges that we're going to eventually have to cross is that I think at some point we're going to have to do like user research, right? Like people who use this, and how do we get that data from them? What does it look like? Does it look like a beta group? Does it look like a rotating basis of like people, like super users that we talk to, or what exactly? Is it like a, you know, occasional survey, which is like garbage? I hate those, but whatever. Yeah, sometimes it's like the only way you can get your data. But anyway, right? But I don't think it really should be you and me's job to run that survey and that group. Like, that should be someone who knows how to do that job. Because, like, sure, I have a background in statistics, but that is more like analysis, not running those things. And now that I've worked with people who like really do specialize in running like user groups and stuff like that, and like how do you get valuable information from these people? How do you gather together like subject matter experts and like really get their opinion on things? Like, that's a skill, and that's like a skill that takes a while to develop. And then on top of that, like you then like taking that information, building that into like a roadmap, and also like breaking it down into tasks, then assign those tasks out, like blocking them out, and just like, you know, I think that that's just, it is like overhead, and it is a lot. And I don't know necessarily if you and I right now have those skills. Not to say we couldn't develop them, it just does take time to develop those things and like to be able to do those things well.
Yeah, my thing is, I'm not a business person.
Yeah,
I have no interest in market research. I have no interest in process like that, because to me, any little bit of that feels so inhuman. It's unnatural. Where to me, if you show someone something cool, there is no market research. It's just like an immediate reaction of, I understand that, I like that, I want to do that, be a part of that. And if you have, you know, the process and the corporate-y, how does this affect the business, and how does this help the business, and how does this affect the market, and what is the market, all that shit, I don't fucking care. I just want to make something cool and show something cool to somebody, and then we all make $1 million. I don't know how it works, but I just want that to happen.
Yeah. Sorry, I wasn't talking about like the marketing side of things specifically. Yeah, fuck it. People probably can be able to find me. I'm super easy to find. So like the company I work for works on like affordable housing, right? So the person I was thinking about when I was talking about that, her job is to run meetings with people who, one, develop affordable housing, like the builders of affordable housing, and what's the easiest way for them to like put out their information. And then it's like she like talks to them about it, and like uses our product as like the framework on how she talks about it. So then she from there knows like, oh, we need to make like these changes for how these developers are using this thing to make their life easier. And so she's like, okay, so these are the kinds of changes that they want to see. But then so for us, what that would be is for people who make games. So we would need somebody, or like we would need to do it, but basically like to talk to people who make games often or something, like super game makers, like people who just make games a lot, or people who don't make games a lot, and we talk to that group too. That we should be like a mix between the two of those things, but we should talk to them to be like, what tools can we provide you that would make your life easier, right? Because that's not like marketing so much as like you're the person who's making these games. What can we do as home games? Like what tools can we give you? Like, is there slight changes we can make to the code that you don't necessarily need to touch, and like what does that help you? But then she also talks to people who are looking for affordable housing, like people who need to get a house or a place to live and don't necessarily have the income to get like not like a regular place, get like a non-affordable housing, like government supported, subsidized or whatever place to live. And talking to those people, she needs to learn like an entirely different set of information, which is like what would make your life easier to apply for affordable housing? Like what kind of information do you have on hand that you can provide? How do you want to get information back on like where you are in the flow of things? Like all those things kind of matter. So that's not even marketing either still, because that's like people who are actually like directly consuming your product already. It's like for us, that's the people who like play games and like use home games but don't necessarily make their own games. So like how do we talk to those people and get things that like, okay, you're like Joe Schmo and you don't know anything about like shit about coding. what can we do to like make your life easier to like spin up home games, get it up and running, like have your friends or family or whoever around you is gonna like actually like, use home games. And then like if we had like, I don't know, like let's say a restaurant or whatever that wants to keep like an instance of home games running for their people like patrons or whatever to use, like maybe that would be a good person to like have in there, because I doubt a restaurant's gonna have like an IT person on staff. It's probably just like the owner or whatever. And like, what can we do to like help them do that? Like, we can't be their IT obviously, but like what we can do is like, you know, add in the next release of home games maybe some patches and stuff that just makes their life easier. So like, that's the kind of like research that I'm thinking about, of like, sure, you and I could probably like guess at some of these things, but at a certain point, like, we're gonna be so far removed from like, you're the person who's never written any Node code before and you want to use home games. Like, I think already at this point, like, we kind of are removed from that, because we have written Node code for like a long time now, both of us. So yeah, I don't know, that's just like that's like my thoughts on it. And that's part of like why I like the sprint schedule, because before the engineers get that code, you have that like research that gets done, and then from there it gets like broken up into like tasks, and then those tasks get slotted into a sprint, and then the developers get it. So there's like a lot of lead-in time of like, somebody looked at this. It's not like they just threw it together and like gave it to you. It's like somebody like researched this, they looked at it, you got like this, like, actually like, this is what's going to help people use your product. And yeah, I don't know, that's just like, that's probably why I like it too. It's like the like whatever it's called, factory flooring it.
Factory flooring it?
Yeah,
I've never heard that before.
It's not the term, but like, you know, like Ford started with like the Model T, and they like, this idiot does the wheels and this dude does the paint, and that.
Oh, the assembly line.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
That makes sense. I think in the case of affordable housing, there's a very direct problem with a direct. There's a person with an issue that's trying to be solved, and you can solve that issue because that's the goal of your product.
Yeah, is
to ultimately address that problem. We don't have a problem for home games. To me personally, like on a very me level, I don't like how disconnected we are from each other. So it's really nice to think that we can have something that brings people together, thinking about like a stereotypical, you know, 4-person family with 2 kids, and the kids don't like their parents or whatever. It's like, okay, well, if we all had a family game, yeah, and just trying to think about that, and like, okay, well, what if someone can, like, little Johnny can learn programming and make a game and play with his family, and then the family can also just play games that other people make, and other families can play those games and kind of bond and have that kind of thing together, while ultimately learning skills. That's not a problem, though. It's just I can't. I'm not trying to address this problem. I just think it'd be like a nice improvement, and it's also kind of like a weird hippy dippy experiment that I just think it'd be. I just think this whole thing is fun.
Yeah,
you know. So having like an objective minded thing like that is not. It doesn't vibe with me because I'm so loose with everything. So that's why I don't know. I'm just trying to think of, if I had to make this real, if I had to be an adult and turn this into something that I can show to an investor or a human person outside of my friend group.
Yeah.
You know, what would I do?
If you're going to Shark Tank it.
Yeah, if I were to Shark Tank it. And they would be like, you haven't quit your job and you're not seconds from bankruptcy, so you don't believe in this enough.
We'll give you $1 for 99% ownership.
Yeah, that too. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that we will run into something like that, though, because at a certain point, little Johnny, he's gonna want better tooling. There's gonna be like some tooling change that we can make to make it easier for little Johnny to make games, but it'll be hard for us to know what tooling changes will help little Johnny, because ultimately, like, our understanding of home games will be very different than little Johnny's understanding of home games, and that'll be true for almost anybody who's making games. Like, you and I, in theory, will have more understanding of like this underlying stuff, and maybe less understanding of like what their game is doing specifically. So like on that level, I do think even then, we would still need to do kind of like something like that, where we do talk to people like Little Johnny in your example, like, yo, like, what would make your life easier, Little Johnny, aside from teaching you Node?
Yeah. Maybe because we've been so disconnected from people for our lives. No, but the whole development of this stuff has been us.
Yeah.
And then we tell our friends and we tell our family, and they're like, okay, like, that's cool. And I think a big thing for beta or for whatever is messaging and just making it clear what this is and what the goal is. Because it is kind of a foreign concept. Not to like toot my own horn, but it's kind of a new, fresh idea, never been done.
It's cutting edge. It's trying to really capture the market. What is it called? Like shake up the industry or whatever?
Yeah, disrupting the industry.
Yeah. It's a disruptive market force or whatever.
But the idea of download this thing, run a server on your computer, and then play games locally that you make with our engine using vanilla JS. It's fucking weird, and it's not accessible just by nature of what it is. Just programming in general is not super accessible, but like ultimately the goal is to make it accessible. That's the whole point of this whole thing.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of hard to communicate that to someone, like, for example, at the market yesterday when I told him the prices of the cookies, and he said, what? Because that's the normal person. The normal person is, I talk too fast and I'm fucking weird and they don't like me, like that's the normal to the normal person.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess just trying to, I don't know, kind of button this up and make it like a sellable thing and kind of to iterate on once we have people looking at it.
Yeah, I do think like when we have people using this, that'll be like the crash test of like, okay, what do you need from us? Totally. Like, what tooling do you want? Like, I think that's gonna be like a big question, and probably like that's gonna be like the most ongoing part of it. I think, like, giving developers the tooling that they want and they need. Because I imagine like even already some of the limitations we've put in via Homedome, somebody's gonna like need to get around that. Like, for example, they need to read a JSON file.
Keep committed along with your game.
Yeah, but then they need to access that file. Oh, I see what you're talking about.
I know you're giving a general example, but I'm getting too specific about that. But I see what you're saying, and those things will need the back and forth and the iteration and stuff. Yeah, maybe that's it. I'm just kind of going nuts because it's been so long with just us.
Yeah. Like
our friend Ray was asking about home games, and just like he's listened to the podcast before, and he's like, so what is it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I'm like, fuck, that's a failure on our side, and it's, are we supposed to open the podcast and say, home games, platform, homemade games you play at home? And that he said that should be the tagline, homemade games you play at home, which is a nice idea, right? Like to kind of give the overall bird's eye view of it. But the actual guts, the specifics of what you do and what it is and why you need it and you don't need it, but why you would want it or whatever. It's kind of hard to communicate. And I remember because I posted on Reddit, or I had a Reddit ad, I think, for the podcast or for home games in general about a year ago. And I got a message from someone, and he was like, hey, I saw your ad. I saw your website. I don't know what this is. And I sent him like a 3-paragraph email in response. You could do this, and it's like this, and the goal is to do this, and one day we want to do this, and we've been and he never responded. They never responded, and I would assume it's just because I sound like a fucking crazy person, and I'm trying to reduce that. So that's like a goal over the next few months, is just to focus in on the messaging.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. It is a lot to take in. And also, I didn't read the 3 paragraphs. I imagine it was run-on sentences and crazy people talk.
Yeah, that's a me thing. I'm really not a good expresser.
Yeah. You're fine.
And I'm mad, I bottle it up. When I'm happy, I also speak nonsense. Yeah, I also bottle it up.
For later.
Yeah. A lot of my problems are caused by me realizing this as a man.
No. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I it'll be interesting to see like after the launch, like and people use it and like try to and start to get a handle on it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like if we looked like I don't know, let's say like 10 years in the future, or whatever, and you're like the CEO and you have like 1,000 people working for you at home games. Ideally, we use a sprint schedule
to bring it full circle.
My point is that if we were ever a very large company, even if we were like a medium or small company, it's probably easier to organize around a sprint schedule. If for no other reason than it organizes Joseph. Because listen, if you're gonna just like put a big whiteboard up in like our virtual office or whatever, like somebody somewhere is gonna be like, what the hell is going on? Like, come to your first day on the job, look at the whiteboard, pick whatever you want, and get going.
Yeah, I need to be a manager in some ways of the product and the goal and the process, and that's just such a. I have considered myself like an anti-process, anti-corporate, anti-whatever, and maybe it's because my day job is for a corporation, and so I'm trying so hard and everything else to just not do that, not be like traditional in that way. But you're just gonna end up with me freeballing 40,000 lines in one file of JS. Just be like, yeah, so it does like everything, and it does these 7 things and these scrap features, and it's just it's not like sustainable.
Yeah. I mean, listen, it is probably a good thing that you are the way you are.
That's the nicest thing you ever said to me.
That's not true at all.
You say so many nice
every
things.
Time. But what I was gonna say, it probably is a good thing that you aren't so strictly like buttoned into it and like super corporate about it, because like I am. And sometimes that means like I struggle a little bit on like knowing what I should be doing in home games, because I definitely am like trained to be like, where's the story? Like, give me my issue that I'm supposed to be working off of that has the like ask and like all that stuff like built into it. And like I know that there was like there was like a vision before, like where that's when I had like asked somebody else. But anyway, yeah, that's like the kind of stuff that I think that I struggle with. So it's probably a good thing you're not exactly like that too. Because if you were also very corporate and I wouldn't say I'm corporate. I do think that I grabbed some of the things that I liked from it. Because when I was a manager, man, having a sprint schedule was nice. Not having a sprint schedule was not so nice. It's a lot easier to be like, that idiot slacking off when there is a sprint schedule. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I think another thing too is that the first 2 years of this, we didn't know what we were doing. Yeah. Truly and honestly, like we had no goal. It was just
write code.
Show up to the podcast. I'm going to talk about what I fucked with this week. And then you're going to be like, cool. That sounds potentially cool. Or whatever.
WebRTC, dope.
Right, exactly. God damn, that was 2 years ago.
Almost exactly.
Man. Anyway, I guess, last time we did the podcast, we talked about our kind of goals for this. So this is kind of more of that talk. Our goals before the beta, and we were going to kind of do a deep dive of individual components every week or 2 weeks, or basically every podcast or cycle, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Kind of going over one specific component and getting it ready before beta. Mm-hmm. And we did that this past week with Landlord.
And Homedome.
And Homedome, yeah, which I suppose I would consider like a subcomponent of Landlord, even though it's a whole different system. But
for now, I think Homedome's going to get more complicated as time goes on.
For sure.
Whereas Landlord probably isn't going to get much more. It's going to get less complicated, if anything.
The code will be less shitty, and its responsibilities will remain relatively the same. Yeah. I was going through the code earlier and just refactoring it after the conversation that you and I had a couple days ago, and there was still a bunch of code left over for tags, like which is something I built in as a proof of concept in a week or two, about a year ago at this point, and it's just that code was still there. You could have still hit the API for it and had everything fall over. So I guess that's basically a summary of the state of home games at the moment. It's just like a bunch of old shit that I'm like, oh, wow, remember that? And then getting rid of it, which is kind of what I'm doing in general.
Yeah, like pruning the tree or whatever.
Yeah. So I'm taking the 2,000 lines of JS in one file for Landlord, which was responsible for several different things, and reducing the amount of things by removing all the old shit that we're not doing for the beta that we're planning on reintroducing at some point in the future. And just kind of getting it cleaned up and ready for beta and making sure it's all solid.
Yeah.
Did you have any thoughts when I showed you all the code and walked you through Landlord and Homedome? And for context for people listening, for basically the high level view of this stuff is Landlord is keeping track of the information that you have in home games, like your games and your assets and the stuff that you as a user, as a developer, put into the system. Landlord was a cute name. I don't really like it that much anymore. Landlord was like, oh, because home games and landlord, like you're in charge of the home data, home. Fucking stupid. But anyway, that was the idea. And then Homedome is the specific testing service that takes your game, runs some tests when you publish it, and it makes sure that it's not insane or a virus or whatever, which is a separate part of Landlord, or separate thing from Landlord, and Landlord and Homedome talk to each other. So that's why Yazeed and I went through both of them at the same time.
I feel like Landlord should be renamed to Home Office, but
I'm against 3-syllable anything. Yazeed, Joseph, Home Games, Xbox. It just works.
Synovia.
4 syllables though. I'm specifically against 3-syllable.
Nice. I guess it's like a code flavor thing more than anything else.
What is code flavor?
I don't know. Listen, do you think I come to this podcast prepared with all the lingo, or do I wing it like 70% of the time? Sometimes I don't remember the word. I just use like office, or what was it? Factory floor instead of assembly line.
Right, yeah, factory floor. It's the gist of what you want to communicate.
Yeah. You use a lot of cascading .then statements. Is there a reason that you opt for that over like async await?
No. I mean, basically the way I wrote Landlord up to that point, everything up to the point of refactoring that I've been doing this week, is figuring out, and this is part of the project management stuff, of just thinking of something new that I think we should do, implementing basic APIs, all in the same existing request handler for the main service, adding a new if statement. If they hit this endpoint, run this logic. All of this stuff is promises, so we have the then catch whatever thing at the end of it. We could do async await stuff. I don't know. I guess I just don't really like the syntax of it. Like, I'd much rather have do this thing .then is a very clear whatever, and it's just because they're all nested, it's pretty shitty, and that's just shitty code. It's not necessarily because it's a then catch whatever you call that syntax. It was really because every single request handler had this same copied and pasted thing, which was check the request header for a token, verify the token, and then run the actual guts of the logic, which at times would be 2 different methods. Like, for example, if you're doing an admin action, we have to get the Cognito user information to see if you're an admin, which is kind of like a second level of authentication, and then running the API stuff after that. Sometimes there would be another one after that, which would be mapping the response that we got from the database to an actual like user-facing response model. All that stuff in general is just because I was not thinking. I was just kind of doing it because it worked, and I wasn't planning it out and trying to think of a clean interface for what these things should be doing and how I should structure it consistently and all that kind of stuff. So in general, it's because I'm a lazy dumbass.
I feel like you're just a highly motivated dumbass, but
okay. That's probably the best description of me I've ever heard. Highly motivated dumbass. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you said you prefer the .then syntax, because I actually am the other way, again, philosophically different, but I prefer the async stuff just because I don't like the nesting of the needing that extra tab kills me, you know. You need more characters for this file. That makes the file bigger. It's bad, you know. It's more characters. That's bad, right? I know it really doesn't actually matter. It's just a handful of bits or bytes or whatever. It's 2 bytes per character in a text file or whatever, effectively.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. So it's whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I it's funny that, again, opposite philosophically, I much prefer the async await syntax to the .then syntax.
See, stylistically, I think it makes sense to have things indented and kind of aligned with the thing that they do. So do this chunk, and then you see a little nested on the inside, and then do this, and then if you kind of do several, I can see how that would be shitty, as opposed to a variable thing equals await this function immediately after a variable thing equals this function. And that's probably more succinct, and maybe at a glance it's more understandable and readable. And despite all the advantages, I don't give a fuck. You're wrong. So
I was gonna say there is actually real tangible advantages to using await syntax. It's blocking, whereas .then is not blocking.
Oh, you mean in terms of the actual node scheduler?
Yeah, well, yeah, at code below it, right? With a .then statement, the code after the then statement's completed, right? You have your .then block. Outside of that block, that code's gonna run while that await is happening. Whereas with the await, it won't run. So it gives you the ability to it can give you the ability to be I need this to complete. The cognito thing, that's a block thing, right? You have to get that to happen first. So that's a good candidate for async await in my mind. I don't remember exactly, because you showed me part of the rewrite, or you showed me the whole rewrite, but I didn't commit it to memory. Unfortunately, I don't have that kind of whatever kind of memory that is, but
eidetic? Is that what it's called?
Listen, your guess is as good as mine. This is another rotisserie situation as far as I'm concerned. But whatever I was saying.
You were saying that the async await stuff makes sense, and that the benefit of the .then is because that code is asynchronous, so you can execute something immediately after the then. That's true. All of our API requests basically act as synchronous blocking code, because it's I need to do this, then I need to do this, and then I need to do this. There is no perform this in the background and then I'll give you a response. The only place that actually happens anything like that is the asset upload, and I talked about this when we were doing it, but basically for people who were not the conversation with me and Yazeed,
everyone else,
there's when you upload a file to Landlord to basically say, here's an image, here's an audio file, here's anything I'm going to use in a game at some point to get an asset ID back. When you do that upload, there's kind of 2 upload steps. One of them is giving the file from your client, from your computer, to our server. Then the other upload is taking the file from our server and uploading it to S3. Mm-hmm. So if you have a 1 megabyte file, let's say it takes a second to upload, you would wait 2 seconds. 1 second for it to hit us, 1 second for it to hit S3. So in order to make you not wait that double time, we basically wait till we receive the entire file on our side, and then we return the response to you, when in the background we're kicking off the upload process. That's the only time, I think, that anything like that happens. So there's certainly a case to do the async await stuff, but I just like the promise syntax, it's nice.
You might be the only human being alive who prefers the promise syntax. I swear to God, dude. I literally have never met anyone else who likes the promise syntax. But it doesn't matter. That's why I was saying it's a code flavor thing. Like what's your favorite flavor of ice cream? Ultimately, you're still eating ice cream. Functionally, it's the same. So it doesn't really make that much of a difference.
I wonder to a novice, to a new person to Node, if it makes, because to me, having a function declared as async and having const thing equals await name of those words might be scary to people. And this is like you said earlier, we don't know what it's like to be new to this anymore because we're so in this. But to me, those words are scary. Async and await are scary. And if I say do stuff, then take things, it's like very English.
Yeah. And there is an argument for that. I do think the counter argument though is that someone who's new to Node probably won't be reading that code.
Totally fair. That's 100% correct.
like if you're a new making games, you probably aren't reading Landlord code. Like, to be honest, that code probably should not be publicly accessible.
No, I'm a firm believer that everything should be open source. Not everything.
Yeah,
everything we do should be open source. Yeah. Our GitHub key, which I've definitely accidentally pushed in code before, and GitHub was like, "Yo, you fucking idiot! Highly motivated dumbass."
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, listen, like, there is an argument for using .then. It is more similar to like how an English statement would work. And honestly, like, it probably won't make that much of a difference. If I look at the code and you have like a 700 long then statement, though, I am going to be like, let's just make this an async and await. But if we are at that point and you didn't catch it, I'm like, listen, Joseph, buddy, what's going on, man? Like, you're doing the rewrite, but you're falling into the same pitfalls.
Yeah, well, there's definitely going to be some extra long shit that I put up in the merge or the pull request in the next couple of days, just because, you know, nothing is ever perfect. It'll always be iterative or whatever. But I mean, just like a pretty good cleanup step that I'm doing at the moment. But some of the functions are still way too fucking long. Yeah. And hey, you know, one day.
That's fair. Yeah. It's not a big deal. It's not a deal breaker. It's still ice cream. I'll still eat it.
I love the metaphor. I love that you're sticking to it too.
It's true. If I told you you're gonna get like vanilla ice cream, it's like fine. Like, that's vanilla ice cream. It's not my favorite thing, but it's still vanilla ice cream. You know.
What is gelato?
It's like an Italian version of ice cream, basically.
Is there a difference in the ingredients or the preparation? What's the?
I don't know. I know it is different. I'm pretty sure it's still dairy because I think it still fucks me up. But I think it's generally, people say it's sweeter.
Okay.
But I've had both, and I honestly, to me, gelato is actually more dense than ice cream, but that might not be true.
Yeah, I just realized this past week I have no idea what the difference is. Just thought I'd ask. Thought you would know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. You
seem like a gelato guy. You're like a bougie man, you know? It's like, I don't eat ice cream. I eat gelato and sorbet, and you're a poor bitch, you know?
I do eat sorbet. But that's because it's different. Sorbet is like fruit flavored. Ice cream isn't fruit flavored normally. Like, strawberry is like probably like the only ice cream flavor that is fruit based. Maybe like cherry, like rum raisin, me too. But my point still stands. Sorbet is all fruit flavored. I really like lemon sorbet. Is really what I'm getting at.
Exactly. You give a very lemon sorbet vibe as a man. Sorbet vibe as a man.
That's going on my dating profile for sure. I'm a lemon sorbet vibe kind of man. But
make sure you leave the typo sorbet vibe or sorbet vibe.
I'll just throw it in there, brother. I just won't even think about it.
Yeah, I guess, did you have any other stuff? Because like we were going through the code, and I was really just moving. I was thinking we could record it beforehand, but then I realized I didn't even want to ask you if you wanted to, because I was not in the mind state to like speak coherently, which I rarely ever am. And so I basically blew through the code and was scrolling up and down and left and right and describing functions that weren't even on screen, and just a fucking mess. So did you have any kind of takeaways or learnings or anything?
The funnier thing is I think I followed along pretty well with what was going on, but that's only because I pulled up the code on my screen and was scrolling around with you.
Yeah, that's smart. Just listening to me trying to teach you something is probably the most useless shit you could do. It's just like
so listening to you teach me something? Yeah, probably. If you're a third party listener, you're like, what the fuck is going on? I've been in it for a while. I can follow along.
Yeah. It's very hard for me to communicate. I'm not good at it. So maybe 105 episodes deep into a podcast, I'm learning this about myself.
Well, I actually don't think it was what you were saying that was the problem. This is like something I learned from like video games, actually, like watching professional video game people, is that you know what you're looking for. And so the moment you put your eyes on it, you're like, this is what I'm looking for. I have it. And then you'll move on. And so when you're watching like a professional player play a video game, like say, like CSGO, for example, they'll just like smash the like view the scores button, and because they're looking for something specific, they're like, how many kills does this guy have? Because then they're like calculating like money and stuff off of that. And it's like they'll hit it just like for a split second, and if you're just a viewer, you're like, what is happening? Why is they just spamming this thing all the time? But that person knows why. But like when you watch yourself play video games, you do that too, like because I've recorded myself playing to like look at something. But yeah, I do that too. It's like you just smash the buttons and you're like, or like you'll like pan over real quick and like snap back to what you were looking at. You do that when you're showing code too, because you know what you're looking for. And so be like, oh, this function, scroll back up to the top, this other thing, and then back down again, because you know what you're seeing. If you can slow that part down, it'd probably be easier for somebody else.
I basically need to bridge the gap between what I'm trying, and I do this in conversation too. I'll skip ahead to what I recently thought of, and I don't give a fuck about what I was just saying. So
perfect for a podcast.
And these are places I can improve overall.
Yeah, I mean, I followed along just fine. I like I told you then too. Sometimes it just takes me a bit. I need to look at code on my own time and just like look through it and scroll up and down and like read the functions and get a good sense for how it's working. Yeah, I mean, I suppose when I see like the pull requests, I'll have a little bit more feedback, I think, as to that kind of stuff. Maybe a little bit more commentary on like what I think we should change about it, and if there's anything I think we can do to like make it a little bit easier on us. And if little Johnny is like real deep in the weeds and has somehow found Landlord code and is reading it to learn how to use something in Node, like we'll have to help him too.
Yeah, I think that's another thing too. I constantly think of use cases that do not exist. Like, what person is like, I don't know programming, let me read the depths of server code.
Yeah. Listen, most people are learning programming on like the Node website and like reading the docs for Node.
Yeah, that's true.
And or copying and pasting from a existing Node project, which is how I start stuff normally. Yeah. Please make this project. I'm like, let's go fucking look at a sample project, pull that shit over and make some changes until we get it where it's gonna go.
I mean, I would love if people did that with our code, just take it, run it, change one of the strings to butts and see what happens. That's like the best way to learn. Yeah. So did anything surprise you with the AWS stuff, the way it was deployed, the way I was building or deploying, or the way that stuff was structured, the responsibilities of the service, the stuff for Homedome, the way I was running it, anything like that?
I want to say no, but the answer is probably yes.
I was surprised it was still working.
Yeah, you were. You were also surprised when you saw that cloud format file. Or
yes, yeah, CloudFormation.
Yeah. There we go.
CloudFormation. I was saying for the longest time, I was thinking to kind of redo our infrastructure as a CloudFormation template, which for those who are unfamiliar with CloudFormation, it's basically an AWS service that allows you to write a file either in JSON or YAML, just different formats, to define your infrastructure kind of in code and say that my code, like my service consists of this database and this many ECS tasks called this that run this Docker image or whatever, which is nice in general because you kind of have version control over your code, your infrastructure, which is code. So you could track changes to it over time. You can kind of audit changes over time too. And if something horrible ever happens, you can just rebuild it using using the template as opposed to needing to redo it all by hand. But I was surprised to see that AWS already had a CloudFormation template that it made from my existing infrastructure. Like, it took all the things I built by hand and gave me a template for it, which I actually was surprised by. I don't know if I would trust it to just like take that file and put it into another AWS account and just have everything work. I really doubt that would be the case. I'd be shocked if it were. But just the fact that it attempted to do that and give us something that we could try to salvage, turn it into something beneficial at some point in the future was nice. But yeah, that was surprising.
Yeah. I think the thing that surprised me the most was the way that the load balancer was set up, where it has I didn't think about the fact that if somebody just hits your website, how does it know to redirect you to the HTTPS version? I never really thought about that. So that was something I was like, wow, Joseph has a big brain. But then also the way that the fact that the load balancer has certs, but the things that the load balancer ties to doesn't have certs because it's like intranet instead of it's intranet instead of internet, effectively. So yeah, I think those are the things, that part of it, I've never set up a load balancer once, so I didn't know or expect anything about that. Honestly, the way that the services talk to each other, I could have guessed that something similar was set up between them, where there is something and that's going to pass it along to Homedome. So I think that made sense. I mean, I've never set up anything in AWS, so that straight up, if somebody was sat down and was like, all right, Yazeed, tell me how home games works, but don't ask Joseph, I'd be like, so there's this thing called Landlord and it talks to Homedome, don't know how. Yeah, and that's to me that made sense.
Yeah, typically you would do, one service makes an HTTP request to another service if they have kind of different responsibilities or whatever, like a microservice architecture. The reason Homedome is its own thing is because we need access to basically run command line instructions on it. And so because of that, it's just one single host. And the reason we need that is because we run a tool called strace, which I don't know what the S is for.
System.
That's a great guess. I never guessed. I always thought it was stack trace because
I'm almost 100% sure you told me it was system trace a long time ago.
Wow. Yeah, I do not remember that, but I believe you.
Why do I remember this in Eddie's $1 Million Cook-Off, but so much of my life I don't remember actually what's happening to me? Anyway.
After the nuclear fallout, you will be the gold mine of niche information. Eddie's $1 Million Cook-Off. And something I said one time.
You ever had a peanut butter jelly smoothie that exploded in the middle of the night? And your dog was there with you, and it looked like tomato soup, but your dog drank it, and it was totally fine? Yeah, I remember that.
Wow, thank God.
Yeah.
What would society do without that?
I don't know. He submitted it to Bobby Flay, and Bobby Flay eventually taught him how to crack an egg with one hand, so it must have been pretty good smoothie, you know what I'm saying?
But yeah, system trace.
System trace. System trace.
Or strace. But basically it runs your game in a specific way so it can tell all the system calls that it's making underneath, and we can tell if you're accessing the file system, if you're making network requests, and these kinds of things. So if you make a game that talks to a non-home game service, we don't allow that, and that's what Homedome does. And because it needs access to that stuff, it runs in a specific on one specific host, or we could make it several hosts if we wanted to kind of scale it out. And so the best way I thought to do that was to communicate over simple queue service in AWS. SQS is what its short name is. And then talking about an SQS queue is very confusing. Yes. So a simple queue service queue, basically Landlord puts messages onto that queue for Homedome instances to pick up. So that was kind of a clever way of doing it, I guess, if I had to, compliment myself.
You should. It is good.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
It's a good way to get around large asset uploading and consumption and stuff like that. Like having a queue to handle it for you is pretty nice.
Large asset meaning?
Sorry, not large asset. Like the breaking down of or testing the game itself, because that's probably the longest time requirement. We don't want the server just idling for it. So.
Yeah. I don't know. It doesn't really take much time now, but I imagine if we had any number of users actually doing it, there would be a little bit of a delay there at that part. But for the most part, everything is pretty quick.
Yeah, I think as Homedome needs more oomph too. We need to like look for more things because people have snuck things through, for example. I think then, but also like load how big a game is, like how long does it actually take to run a game. Like I think a big enough game would probably take a bit for us to just like spin up Homedome and like, you know, do Homedome stuff, like treat it like, you know, not playing the game, but at least like doing some basic stuff about it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it might be worth looking into in the future to have kind of a automated test run as a part of your game. But my thinking is, all we do right now is make sure that there's a file called index.js, that your actual class has certain methods on it, and that you return a squished array of stuff when we call squish. I think that's all it is. Yeah. And so
I thought we were calling the basic functions that home games provides, like adding a player, moving a player, that kind of stuff.
No.
Oh, that might be something we want to look into doing.
We might check that those functions exist, but I don't know if we call it. I don't know. I don't remember. But I remember we check index.js and some other stuff.
Yeah.
But that doesn't. Basically, someone can put something in their game where when you click a certain block, it calls Pornhub.com or whatever. Yeah. And so that would be a specific path that would break, and basically trying to figure out a way around that. But then there's a way around that as well. So it's kind of like this crazy rabbit hole of like, how do we, whatever. And then everything is open source. So if you wanted to, you could just test our shit all day, knowing the exact function of how it works and trying to fuck it. But
yeah, I mean, sorry. Oh, I think we should call like the basic stuff, like starting the game, having a player login, so that when we review the code later, we don't accidentally fuck our own computers up.
It's good. Yeah. Well, I would imagine that we read the code before we run it, but maybe that's.
You'd imagine that. You would imagine that. You're clearly smarter than I am, because I would definitely boot it up and then also look at the code while I'm doing that. I join the game and be like, huh. This blew up my computer.
We might want to just run that stuff in virtual machine.
Like a VM, yeah.
Yeah, because
just disposable VM.
Yeah, because if they try to, they just blow away our root file system or whatever, it's just a VM, it's whatever. Or my Windows machine, because I'm about ready to throw this motherfucker out of the garbage can or whatever every day now, because I hate Windows so much. So it's like, yeah, fuck it, destroy my computer. Give me any reason to switch to Linux. Please, someone make a virus for it.
Careful what you ask for. Yeah, that's I do think Homedome, as it becomes more complicated and needs to look for more stuff, it will be or like automate more testing. I think it'll be a little more time consuming.
Yeah, for sure, it'll get more complex and be more expensive overall, and it'll require a bunch of shit. But right now, fuck it, it's all good.
Yeah, it is. That's it.
Let me see. I have some notes here which are incomprehensible to me now that I'm reading them back. Scalability for auth. I meant something by that, but I cannot remember it for the life of me at the moment. Oh, authentication. There's different forms of authentication in Landlord. So like right now at the moment, we just verified that you are who you say you are, and there's some actions that we confirm that you can only do to your own resources. But in the future, we might have some stuff where maybe you give access to other people. Like realistically, if you're working on a team, it's not just one person; it's a collection of people, and trying to think about authentication and that kind of stuff in the future. But at the moment, it's not really in scope, I guess, for what we're trying to do. So, but just thinking our auth might need more meat in the future, kind of sharing permissions between different people and stuff like that. Like if I'm a team of the two of us, and we're both working on a game. I want to give you access to view the publish requests that I've made for a game that's not yet published. At the moment, you can't do that. It just has to be me signed in for my game that I created.
I mean, isn't it kind of like GitHub, where you would have like a third account make the actual like home games account, and then both those people use that account to like, do what they need to do for it, but because the actual code writing will happen in like off of home games.
The GitHub thing though is my account and your account both have access to that team account, so we have like separate accounts that we can access.
I see, but like. I see. But like the organization for home games isn't directly tied to your account, is it? It's tied to your account because you have access to it. But like home games has like an account basically, doesn't it?
It does, but I think I'm listed as like the owner or admin because I signed into my one account and I have two things on there. So that's what I mean. There's some sort of advanced permission. I'm not too familiar with how GitHub does it. I just know I have home games on my shit because I don't know. I did something.
Listen, I don't know either. I've never set up like a shared repo like that. So
yeah, I have, but I have no recollection of it. So I'll take those learnings and build something into home games.
Fair. Yeah, I think adding in like a permissioning system can come later.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
it is the most frustrating part of building an application. Has been my experience.
Yeah, permissions are generally also pretty boring. So
yeah, that's probably why it's so frustrating.
Yeah, trying to find the motivation to fucking do anything. But that's pretty much it. Yeah, no new features, no any of that kind of stuff. I'm just kind of spitballing about what auth would look like in the future, but. Yeah, Landlord, I still have a merge or pull request. God damn, I'm so used to saying merge request.
You can keep calling it a merge. I told you can call it a merge request. People probably will get what you're saying.
I know. I just don't like being wrong. I don't like saying wrong words.
So. I mean, that is what's happening, though. You do hit squash and merge or just merge.
Yeah, but it's called a pull request.
Why is it called a pull request? Should it be called a push request?
I would... Okay, I think maybe the original thing was you had the collection of commits, and then those commits were a pull is what a fetch and a merge in one go.
Yeah.
So it would be basically a merge. Fuck.
It is a merge. When you on GitHub, when you merge in a pull request, you hit merge or squash and merge.
Yeah. Same thing as GitLab, but it's called a merge request. Anyway, this is all nerd shit. This entire podcast is nerd shit.
Yeah. Listen, we opened this podcast by talking really in depth about our views on sprint planning and whether or not that's an ideal system. Like, is Agile the way we go forward? Agile and Scrum. Like,
yeah.
When a podcast starts with that, it's only nerd shit. There's not any not nerd shit in that podcast.
You're guaranteed for no one to hit the end. It's gonna be like, what the fuck are they talking about? And cut it off.
Yeah, I'm Yazeed, by the way. That's Joseph.
Hello. Today is Friday, April 8th, 2022. This is episode 105 of the podcast.
I love when the podcast, we just are in the weeds and then somewhere or other we're like, what is happening? All right. Scalability. I do permissions. Have your permission structure should probably be put in place eventually, but I'm with you. Not right now.
Oh, yeah. No, not doing anything, whatever. Basically, like I was saying, Landlord, pull request, finishing up that shit, making sure it all works. I started the refactor, and now none of the APIs return successfully. So I need to look into what's going on there. Once I do that, put up the pull requests, and then the next thing will be on the home games core side, actually downloading those games and playing them and showing Yazeed how that stuff works. But luckily, you already know how that stuff works for the most part, and it's just going to be some HTTP requests to the service I've already showed you. So hopefully that goes smoothly. And then,
are you gonna make any changes on Homedome?
Not at the moment, no. Okay. It's just going to be what it is for the time being.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
I just scratched my face and it actually hurts a little bit.
The scratching hurts, or the thing that you scratched hurts?
I scratched close to my eye and it actually like hurt. You know, like when you scratch yourself and it's like, oh, it was itchy, but now it's not. And it's like that was like the correct amount of pressure to put on the scratch. Oh. And sometimes you just scratch too hard. This part should probably get cut from the podcast, honestly. But...
No. This is gonna stay. This is not gonna be cut. Unlike your flesh that you scratched too hard.
Am I?
I can't tell.
No, I'm not bleeding.
You're fine.
I'm just stupid.
Aren't we all?
Anyway, okay, sorry. Next up was.
No, yeah, just the Home Games core stuff that actually accesses the landlord stuff that we just went through. So, yeah, it's going. I mean, honestly, the landlord stuff was the shittiest, messiest, worst part of all of this. So, the fact that we got it done first, well, at least I'm in the process of getting it done first, is nice, and hopefully be smoother sailing.
Yeah, I think it will be. I mean, our launch goal is
July 1st.
July 1st. So
the last
podcast between now and then?
I think it's 4.
Okay.
I want to say it's 4, 5, something like that. I think the last podcast that we do before our launch is like June 25th or something like that. So in a perfect world, we'd have it done by then.
Yeah.
But really, it's just I hope that we could just be doing polish basically the entire month of June, have everything kind of done, everything good, workable and ready, and then it's just, you know, making sure it's all presentable and nice, and so we can kind of hit the ground running in July.
Yeah. Well, I was counting and then doing division, which both things I'm not very good at, but I think we have to do like 2 a week or 2 per podcast, like 1 a week, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll figure it out. Some of those are definitely not a full 2-week thing, especially because you're familiar with pretty much everything there except for the build system. So,
yeah. In theory.
Yeah, ideally.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we did 2 and it was fine. It took it's 2 hours or something like that, and most of the rest of these should be shorter than that because it's not as complicated, and I've seen most of them before. So
definitely, yeah. And like I said, this was the worst code. Landlord code was the worst code.
Yeah, don't read Landlord code now and try to learn Node. This would be my guess for anyone who's listening.
Never read my code if you're trying to gain anything valuable.
That's not true. I've learned a lot from reading your code.
How not to write code.
That too, but buried in your code is brilliant diamonds. You just have to kind of see through the madman and see the genius behind it, I guess. I don't know.
Just like my personality. I'm an unlikable.
It's not unlikable. Your code is just duplicate. You're not dry, is what I'm saying.
I'm not dry?
Yeah.
I'm a wet programmer.
Wet bitch.
I don't know where else to go from there, so I guess that's it for this episode. Unless you have anything to add. I think we've gone through those other bullet points. It's just
yeah.
Kind of like,
I don't know anything else.
Yeah, my bullet point messaging and then a sub bullet speed is me saying we need to get better at messaging. I talk too fast, which I've already talked about.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, see, I remember.
Nice.
The old computer.
You know, the nice thing about Twitter is that people read those at their own speed. That's fine.
Yeah, my tweets are bangers. My speech is terrible.
Yeah. You're really built for
the internet.
Written communication.
You might be too, bud.
No, I'm not good at that either. I'm not a communicator.
Yeah. So that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. Thank you, everybody, for listening. As always, our music was done by our friend Tynan. His name is Nitan on Bandcamp. That is Nitan, Nytan. You can find us on Twitter at HomeGamesIO. We also have a website, homegames.io. You can send us a message using the contact form at the bottom of the page. Send us questions, comments, concerns, or whatever you'd like. Thank you to the one person who's actually signed up for an account, by the way.
Yes.
Shout out to you.
Our friend in some school district.
We looked up where you are. It's kind of weird that we did that. You're our one.
No,
user.
It was his email.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you everybody for listening. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye. If my email was like Yazeed at buttforks.com, you'd probably look up what buttforks was.